Okay, now let's create and edit the slider as we want it to be. Go to your Ultimate Slider package and select the Demos folder and then the Slider Tutorial folder and finally the scene itself. Here are some beautiful cubes that are ready to be used in our slider. Let us create a slider manager first, shall we? After that, assign the cube's parent to the slider component parent slot. The slider will instantaneously sort the cubes based on the default settings. We'll change the settings later, but for now, let's look at the slider this way. Right now, the slider is on automatic mode and will move on its own with a ping-pong movement system. Alright, now let's try to tweak some stuff. First of all, I want to change the distance and the direction of the slides. I do this by first going to the settings part of the slider manager, and from here I can set the direction of the slides. You are able to change this to all directions, but for 2D or UI objects, you may want to leave the Z value at 0. After you're okay with your settings, you can press play and see the changes. The slider now has got this cool direction thing going on. Now let's change other things. Here you can change the movement type of the slider. There are about 33 different movement styles you can choose from. Feel free to test and check each one of them and find the best one that works for you. Also, I reduced the speed a little bit with the help of this variable right here. So smooth. The way of the movement is now changed as we wanted it to be. But the slides move on their own. What if we want to control them ourselves instead? So we go to the controllers part of the slider. And here we can see that the slider controller type is set to automatic. There are so many different ways to control this slider. Let's start with the keyboard, shall we? This way we need to assign 2 different keys in order to move the slider in positive or negative direction. How about switching the control type to arrows? By selecting this, we need to assign 2 different UI images to work as our slider arrows. We've got some default images here to use for this purpose. We give the slider both images and press play. We can then control the slider with these arrows. But for button controller, it's a little different. For each slide you have, your slider needs a different UI image. We have some buttons in our canvas to test it out. So we assign the buttons in the right order to the slider. After we're done, we can test the slider. By pressing each button, your slider will move to the related slide. We can also control the slider with a simple Unity scroll bar. Here we need to add the scroll bar. And just drag it into the scroll bar slot. So select the control type as you need. We can also enable the swipe option to work as our second slider controller. This works with both click and touch. Now let's give our slides a little animation effect, because they're too static. We have to go to the Animations tab and choose a model for our animation. There are lots of settings here. You can try and change different options, and every single one of these is explained completely in the document. I'll just change some values randomly and test the results. Now look at that. The slides have animation effects now, and you can change them based on your ideas. You can come up with tons of different combinations of those options. Here I give you another example of that. I can choose the animation to be played in a special time when the slider is moving. For that, I just change the animation timing to specified. And then I can give a value to the slider to show when I want my animation to be played when the slider is moving. This one, for example, means when the slider is halfway to reach the point. I also changed the animation model to rotate and modify the direction of the animation values. Let's change the type of the animation movement too, and finally, the speed of the animation. Now let's grab some popcorn and watch the slider do what it does the best. This was just a simple introduction to the Ultimate Slider. There are many more functions and options to explore. Please read the document provided inside the package to continue the way.